Hello everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. Today we have some pro-revenge stories and our first story of the day is by randomstudman, Why You Should Always Be Nice to Potential Hires. This is a bit of a long story about the value of being professional and nice no matter the position you are in. My wife and I moved to our current city back in 2013. The standards for my wife's job here are different to the standard back home. She has an associate's degree and most employees wanted a bachelor's degree. However, nothing could stop her and she kept putting in applications. One day, one of the employers she had sent applications to called her back. However, it was not to tell her she had gotten the job. Instead, it was the manager telling her how unprofessional it was of her to put in for positions that were obviously above her. In fact, I'm going to delete your email from our system. Please don't apply anymore, it's just a waste of our time. I'll send you a letter since you just can't seem to follow directions in my emails. My wife, after she got over her initial shock, asked the manager for her name. I don't see why it matters, but Ivanka Tulip. My wife said thank you and continued her job hunt. Sure enough, she got the letter in the mail asking her not to apply anymore, citing inability to follow clear directions. My wife held on to this letter. I told her to throw it away, but she insisted on keeping it. Eventually, my wife landed a job at one of the biggest employers in the city. Not only that, but this employer was the main supply of business to the employer that was so rude to my wife. Well, my wife is an extremely precocious and hardworking person and eventually got her bachelor's and then became the manager over her crew. One of the manager's responsibilities was to decide who to send business to. My wife told her boss about the letter and what happened and used that as justification that if this is how a business treats potential hires, then they really shouldn't be trusted with their business. Her boss honestly probably did not care very much and just let my wife do what she does. Honestly, my wife is kind of a boss person and it wouldn't surprise me if her boss just gave her whatever it took to keep her happy. Wouldn't you know it, the rude employer's business went way down. In fact, my wife would only give them business if they were the last ones who could be called. This led to the most awesome meeting my wife has had this year. You see, to improve the relations, the crappy employer set up a meeting with my wife and my wife's boss and the crappy business's top management. They needed this meeting to show how much value they could add. The day of the meeting comes and everyone introduces themselves. Finally, Mrs. Tulip says she is the manager and how nice it was to meet everyone. That's when my wife said, "Excuse me, I just want to be certain. Are you Mrs. Ivanka Tulip?" Ivanka says, "Yes, that's me." My wife says, "Oh, excellent. I am so happy to finally meet you in person." Thinking she had an in with my wife, Mrs. Tulip was over the moon. My wife let them carry on and tell her all about how much value they could add to the business and how they could really help out my wife's employer. This is when my wife says, "Well, thank you, but unfortunately, I feel that we can't really give business to an employer who we feel has some ethical issues that need to be addressed." The big boss from the bad employer says, "Excuse me, we were not made aware of any ethical issues. What are you talking about?" That's when my wife brought out the letter that was signed by Mrs. Tulip. My wife then tells them that if they treat potential hires this way, then it was an ethics issue for my wife, and it would be very hard for my wife to give them business. Since she had concerns about the welfare of the business, she couldn't approve any more goes to bad business than absolutely necessary. Mrs. Tulip turned white, and you could hear a pin drop on the other side of the table. My wife thanked them for their time, but apologized and went back to her work. We don't know if anything ever happened to Mrs. Tulip, but that business has since downsized and has gotten a reputation for being a poor choice to send business throughout my wife's organization. I really admire what OP's wife did here, but let's be honest. How many of you guys, if you got a letter like this, would actually save it as a way of motivating yourselves, and how many of you would just tear it up and maybe not quit, but keep moving forward, but not save this really negative letter? Let me know in the comments down below which of those you would do. Our next story is by CanisAnimus, Dad Kills Obnoxious Party with Science. In the late 80s, my neighbors across the street were having a party. They were blasting the radio with a station playing offensive music. Again, 80s and from my dad's perspective. It was so loud it could be heard all across the lake community. They had a habit of being disruptive and disrespectful neighbors, but my dad didn't accost them. He He didn't threaten or yell at them. He decided to fix it with science. He went into the garage and cobbled together a mad scientist contraption consisting of a waveform generator, an oscilloscope, and an old metal bed frame. He tuned into the FM radio frequency they were listening to, causing major static disturbances in their music. Every time they changed to another station, he found the frequency and disturbed it again. After about 10 to 15 minutes, I think we're talking almost 30 years ago, they finally shut off the radio and, after a few minutes more, just began to relax and engage with their company. Judging by the sounds of their voices, the party only got better after the radio got turned off. Judging by how loud it seems this party was, OP's dad probably saved some people's hearing. The fact that it would be so loud over an entire lake community, those people didn't need to stop partying, they needed to stop for their ears' sake. Our next story is by JawShoeWaah. Talk to me any way you please? Nah. Have fun losing the entire staff along with the juiciest of juicy contracts. This is a super throwback, but it still brings a smile to my face. I was a rink rat growing up. The only day I wasn't in the skating rink were the adult and gay nights. Calm down, it was the 90s and that's literally what it was called. Friday night, Saturday morning and night, along with Sunday morning and night, I was there. Heck, I didn't even leave between the morning and night sessions. I even went Tuesday nights as well. I was serious too. I dove deep into speed skating and not trying to toot my own horn, but I was pretty good and well known. Anyway, I had been going to this specific skating rink for years and knew everyone. One day, it was right before I started 7th grade. The owner came up to me and asked me to go out onto the rink floor and tell some kids to slow down. I did and came back and he asked me how would I like to make $7.50 an hour, to which I responded, do I also get in for free? He laughed and said, of course. Boom! First job and I wanted to be there anyway, so it was the biggest win-win of all time for me. To say I loved it was an understatement and I did everything besides work the snack bar. DJ, skate counters, floor guard, janitor, hype man, you name it and I did it. It was some of the greatest times of my life. So much fun and the owner was super awesome. Also, we were paid under the table, so getting an envelope full of cash every week just felt like a bonus for having fun. To me, it wasn't a job, it was pure fun. It also helped that all my friends were regulars as well. A few years go by and the owner sold to another guy who we will call Tim. Tim could be an absolute nightmare to work for. He changed the entire dynamic of the place and everyone felt it. Now, this skating rink was popular and extremely old. Lots of people all over the city knew of it. My mom and aunt skated there when they were kids, if that tells you anything. Some way or another, the new owner set up a juicy deal that had the rink starting making a crap load of money. On Saturday night from 7 to 11, it was skating per usual, but from 11 to 2ish/3ish, it was a club. A local hip-hop station came in there with local label Swishahouse and turned the place upside down for those few hours. Every week, and the place was poppin'. There must have been over 2,000 people in there on average, and at $20 per person, it adds up quick, plus the snack bar would never stop turning out food and drink. We were making stupid money. Bonus! We also found some good stuff when cleaning up as well. Money, knives, weed, jewelry, it was awesome. So Tim has it made, but sometimes he would fly off the handle for little things. All of us weren't sure what his deal was, but he would explode out of nowhere and start talking all kinds of nonsense. I'd started to have enough because we had all worked there for many years without issue. One night, he went too far. I don't like being called outside of my name. It's a respect thing. My own mother didn't do it, and he for sure wasn't. For context, I was in 10th grade now. One night, he was in some kind of mood and for whatever reason was taking it out on everyone. I don't remember the exact situation, but he started freaking out on me at about 11:30 p.m. Now, Slim Thug and Paul Wall were in the building that night, so the place was extra packed. Way more than usual. I'm sure we were breaking all kinds of fire marshal rules. He went ballistic and called me every name in the book while I just stood there with rage building up in me. I'd had enough. For years, this place ran flawlessly and everyone loved us, so he really didn't have a good reason to treat us in the manner he did. My plan was formed. I immediately gathered everyone else that was working and we all decided that enough was enough. It was time for a lesson. I assembled the entire crew and we all quit on the spot. All of us. That meant nobody to serve food, clean, help the Swisha House people, or just carry out general things that needed to be done when 2,000 to 3,000 people were in the building. He was stunned. His tone changed and he became very sweet. We weren't having it. As an additional freak you, I called the other 2 people that were off and they showed up to quit as well. Tim had already reached out, so he assumed they were showing up to work. Nope, we left him with 0 workers on the absolute busiest of busy nights, and boy, did it implode. He couldn't find anyone to work, so the place went to absolute crap that night. The on-duty officer told him he needed to figure something out or he was going to close it down without workers. Well, he didn't. It closed down that night, and apparently without staff, it got nasty. People started having sex, smoking, trashing the place, and all kinds of stuff. Shortly after, the radio station and label took their business elsewhere, and not long afterward, the place closed down. He lost his entire investment. This was very bittersweet for me because I love the place, but he ran it into the ground. The building is still standing and I would love to bring it back to its former glory, but my pockets aren't deep enough yet. Maybe one day. It's actually kind of a shame to see what happened to skating rinks in general. When I was a kid, the whole thing was a very popular practice and then very quickly fell out of style. When I was a kid, I loved to go rollerblading and skating around, but something changed along the way and a lot of skating rinks and rollerblading and all those kinds of things just kind of fell off a bit, at least in a widely popular landscape. And our final story of the day is by Faidel. Screw me, screw you. I want my money. About 30 years or so ago, I was 17 and was about to head to university. An acquaintance through my parents' church offered me a job working with him, learning to be a pizza chef. Awesome. I'd need money for uni and I'd already had a stack of jobs, so working hard was nothing new for me, but being a cook certainly was. My experience with Italian was limited to Pizza Hut, so I accepted that at the start I was a liability, not a help. I started work, and to start with, I worked free. Cool, but when it got to the point about 3 months later that I was opening by myself and taking whole shifts by myself, well, I should be paid. I screwed up all of my 17-year-old courage and confronted the owner, let's call him Nick because that was his name. He huffed and puffed and tried to tell me how terrible I was, but I stood my ground and now I'm on minimum wage. Not bad in my eyes at the time. I worked there for another 3 years through most of my uni degree, often putting in 30 hours of contact at uni, 30 hours at the restaurant, and 30 hours of study. It was hectic, but just became the norm. Towards the end, I became a lot more savvy and started researching labor laws, keeping records of my pay packets and end-of-year tax receipts, and realized Nick and other co-owners were screwing me. I wasn't on the correct rate, they weren't deducting tax correctly, and a couple of other accounting oversights. By then I was working with my, at the time, mate. Let's call him girlfriend creeping tickhead. It was Sunday night, the place was packed, I had tickets all the way down my line, and girlfriend creeping tick and I were pumped. We had a new boss who'd just bought into the business who thought he was the king of the world because he was now a restaurateur. A right jerk, but after years of having to stay back to cook pizzas on World Cup nights for the boss's friends or Christmas, New Year's Eve, etc., I was sorta used to the grandstanding chest-puffing behavior. The night in question, the new boss would not let me start the second pizza oven. Think a 2-tier oven. I was only allowed the top tier on because it cost too much. So here I am, oven full, 2 pizza chefs running full speed, and we're only falling behind because one oven wasn't enough and it was starting to cool down from being so full and open so frequently. New boss gets a couple of tables of mates in. Instead of just asking us to cook some compensation garlic bread or whatever, he starts loading up trays himself and putting them in the oven. Not the worst crime, but because he had no idea what he was doing, every 30 seconds he'd open the oven to check them, cooling the oven down even further, potentially ruining the food we had in there and slowing us down measurably. I had the head chef chewing my butt out as his food was ready to go, but my food on the same tickets wasn't. It was hectic and not fun. This garlic bread bandit crap had to stop. I said, "New boss, stop messing with my oven. If you want garlic bread, just ask. I'll get it done immediately for you." New boss says, "What? Huh? You're messing with my oven. You're cooling it down and we're too busy for this crap. Just tell me and I'll make it." New boss says, "Okay." Did he do it? Nope, he kept on. Cue the same conversation another 2 times. The last time I told him I'd blow my stack if he did it again. You see where this is going. He did it again. Now, after being consistently ripped off and abused, so many kooky stories from that place, for 3 years, my time was up there anyway, and this was the time to do it. I looked at girlfriend creeping Tick and said, "Yo, we out of here?" He looked back and simply said, "Yup." We stripped our aprons and in front of the entire restaurant, Pizza Kitchen was in full view of the entire restaurant, threw them on the bench and told New Boss, "We quit. All this, all these tickets, all the food in the oven you've messed up, and your mate's crappy garlic bread, this is all yours now. Good luck." Then we walked out, got some coffees from the baristas, sat in front of the pizza area, and watched him absolutely flounder. He had no idea what he was doing, and there was literally no one else there that could help him. We could see food coming out from the kitchen, but the pizza on the same ticket was taking 20 minutes or more longer to come out. Tables were hopping mad, we could hear the grumblings all around us. I'll admit it was pretty jerkish, but undeniably satisfying to behold. That's not the pro-revenge though. The pro-revenge was that I'd been stealing my timesheet every Sunday night, photocopying it, then replacing it Monday mornings. I'd been doing that for over a year. I'd also told girlfriend creeping Tick to do it. Monday, I walk in and Nick was there and was furious at me. As I was walking in, you could see his chubby face turn bright red as he bellowed across the restaurant floor, "What the freak do you think you're doing here? Get the freak out and never come back." I said, "Nick, we've got to talk. We can do it here or we can do it in your office, but trust me, you want to have this conversation privately." Nick says, "Fine, you come with me then," desperately trying to gain the upper hand back, and he storms to his crappy little office out the back. Nick says BS about how he's going to withhold pay and a whole heap of other illegal hot air. I say, "You done? Good. Here, read this." I hand him a printout of an Excel spreadsheet, a stack of photocopied timesheets, a stack of photocopied payslips, printed copies of the wage awards, all of which detail the amount he's ripped me off for. "You owe me $6 grand. I'll take cash or a check now." Did I mention he and the other bosses had just been simultaneously raided by the tax office and that they and the business were all on thin freaking ice? Yeah, bad timing for Nick the Tick. Nick spluttering, wringing his hands, But I can't afford it. Look, I'll show you my bank accounts," as he physically starts scrambling to find his bank statements. Nick, I literally don't give a crap about you, your bank accounts, or your situation. You owe me $6 grand today, or I take all of this to the tax office and all of the other relevant government departments that will be very interested in this. Because Nick, I have a feeling if you're doing this to me, you're doing it to other staff here as well, huh? As for not having the money, well, again, not my problem, but you just bought a new $60,000 Pajero. So if you have to run that down to the car yard and sell it, again, I don't give a crap, but I get $6 grand today. He literally teared up a little. I'm not sure why, maybe through frustration, rage, or just being screwed by someone he thought way beneath him. But seeing a grown man who's abused you for many years cry at your hands is a pretty beautiful thing to behold as a 20-year-old kid. I got a check that day for my whole $6 grand. And yes, it cashed. But the best was walking out of his office with girlfriend creeping Tick standing there who deadpan just looked him in the eyes and said, "Nick, we need to talk." and in they walked in to do the same thing. $10,000 he lost that day. The best part? A few of my old friends at the restaurant caught wind of the fact that I had enraged him and asked what it was all about. I let them know how they were being screwed, how to take copies of all their timesheets, and where to find the relevant laws. I know of several other people who did the same thing to him. And that was how I left the hospitality industry and started working in my field of study, never to look back. It definitely helps when you've caught wind that your owner already had some kind of audit type thing happen and they're on thin ice. Otherwise, it might have been a lot more messy to have this work out in success for OP. It was pretty ruthless and cutthroat, but OP got exactly what they were owed. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So if you had a favorite story of the day, let me know which story and why in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe if you haven't. Also, please consider turning on notifications so you'll never miss an upcoming video too. No matter what you did, whether it was viewing the video, liking, commenting, subscribing, thank you all so very much for supporting the Storytime channel. Every little thing that you guys do helps the channel grow more and more every single day, and I appreciate the heck out of it. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you all next time right here.